Revenge Office Stories. The CEO smirked as he looked out at the entire company. We were all packed into an all-hands meeting. To increase efficiency, he announced, we're trimming the excess fat. Then he looked right at me. Your position has been eliminated, effective immediately. Shock rippled through the room, followed by quiet snickering from some of the 70 colleagues I'd worked with for 15 years. As security walked me out, clutching a cardboard box, none of them had a clue. They didn't know that the excess fat they'd just cut was the only thing holding their $14 million in federal contracts together. That one arrogant move was now costing the company $100,000 an hour, and the clock was ticking. And I was the only person who could stop it. If you've ever felt undervalued or watched a cocky boss make a disastrous mistake, you're going to want to see how this played out. Go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss the fallout. This story is a powerful reminder that sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one holding everything up. 15 years. That's how long I'd been with Sterling Corporation. I wasn't just another employee. I was part of the foundation. I joined back when we were a scrappy underdog in a tiny office that always smelled a little like burnt coffee. I was employee number 12. I remember celebrating our first big contract with cheap pizza and even cheaper champagne. I remember the all-nighters, the weekends spent crushing bugs in the code, and that quiet pride of building something real from nothing. My whole world was compliance, specifically government contract compliance. It's not glamorous work. It's a universe of acronyms, dense legal jargon, and mountains of paperwork. It's the kind of job that, when you do it perfectly, no one even knows you exist. And I was perfect. Our new CEO, Preston Holloway, had been in charge for about 6 months. He was a classic MBA jock type who spoke only in buzzwords and treated the company like his fantasy football team, trading people for projected Q4 earnings. He had the charm of a new sports car, but the emotional depth of a broken stapler. He didn't see a community or a team. He saw assets and liabilities on a spreadsheet. And in his eyes, I, the quiet head of compliance, was a liability, a cost center. He never grasped what I actually did. To him, compliance was just red tape that slowed down his aggressive growth strategies. He couldn't see that compliance wasn't the brakes on the car, it was the control system that kept the engine from tearing itself apart. Sterling Corp's entire business was built on complex, high-value federal contracts. These weren't just simple agreements. They were deep partnerships with government agencies that demanded flawless, absolute adherence to the rules. The penalty for screwing up wasn't just a fine, it was getting blacklisted. The heart of our compliance program was a system I'd personally designed and built from scratch over a decade. I called it the Aegis system. It was my life's work. It was a custom platform that automated and integrated every single one of our contractual obligations, from security protocols and data handling to billing and employee certifications. It was the reason we'd passed every single audit for 10 years straight, while our competitors were getting fined left and right. Aegis had one feature that Preston, in his infinite wisdom, had insisted on. He called it the dead man's switch. He wanted a zero-tolerance automated protocol. His logic: if a key compliance role was ever vacated without a proper, certified handover, the system should assume a catastrophic security breach was underway. In that case, Aegis was designed to do one thing: instantly lock down all federal contract access, freeze all billing, and flag our company as non-compliant across all government systems. It was a self-imposed guillotine, meant to stop a data breach by severing the connection entirely. Preston loved it. He called it brutally efficient. I had warned him in a carefully documented memo that creating a tripwire this powerful with a single point of failure, the designated responsible officer, was incredibly risky. He just waved it off. We need decisive, automated solutions, he'd said, not more hand-wringing. And that single point of failure was me. As the architect and sole level 1 administrator, I was the designated responsible officer. My credentials were the master key that assured the entire federal government that Sterling Corp was secure. So when Preston got on that stage, it wasn't just a quarterly meeting. It was an execution. Streamlining for the future, he called it. He paced the stage, his teeth impossibly white. To increase efficiency, he boomed, we're trimming the excess fat. We're removing legacy positions that are no longer aligned with our dynamic, forward-facing posture. I felt that cold knot form in my stomach. I knew this was coming. In our last few meetings, he'd used phrases like reevaluating overhead, all while his eyes glazed over as I tried to explain how everything was connected. He didn't want to understand. He just wanted my department's budget to shrink. Then he did it. He stopped, scanned the crowd, and locked eyes with me in the 10th row. A cruel little smirk played on his lips. As part of this streamlining, the position of Director of Compliance has been eliminated, effective immediately. You could hear a collective gasp, then nervous snickers from the new hires Preston had brought in. My face was on fire. This wasn't a private HR meeting, it was a public shaming. He was making an example out of me, the old guard being tossed aside. 70 people, many of whom I'd mentored for years, just stared. Some looked away, some looked shocked, and a few, his inner circle, looked smug. 2 security guards I'd known for years appeared at my side. "Ma'am, we need to escort you out," one of them whispered, his face grim. That walk felt like a mile. The whole company watched me being led out like a criminal. At my desk, a cardboard box was waiting. An HR rep I'd never seen before told me I had 15 minutes. I moved in a daze, packing up my life, a photo of my late husband, a few worn-out programming books, a coffee mug that said, "World's Best Compliance Officer." My colleagues scurried away, avoiding eye contact. The air was thick with survivor's guilt, that mix of shame and relief you feel when someone else gets the axe. As the guard carried my box, I took one last look at the office I had poured my soul into. Preston Holloway hadn't just fired an employee. He'd just ripped the cornerstone out of his own building. He was about to find out what happens when the walls start to crack. The drive home was a blur. I remember just sitting in my car in the driveway, the cardboard box on the passenger seat, like a tombstone for my career. The humiliation was a physical ache in my chest. But underneath the hurt, a different feeling started to bubble up, a cold, quiet certainty. I wasn't thinking about revenge or sabotage. I was thinking about procedure. For 15 years, my life was procedure. Rules and protocols were my native language. And there was one final protocol I had to follow. As a federally certified responsible officer, my departure legally required me to update my status on the government portals. It was a matter of professional ethics. If I didn't, I could lose my own license. I went inside, made a cup of tea, and sat down at my laptop. My hands were steady. I logged into the main federal contractor portal, a clunky, ancient-looking government website. I navigated to my profile. There it was in blocky letters, Responsible Officer, Sterling Corporation. Beside it was a drop-down menu with a few options: active, on leave, and separated. I took a sip of tea. I thought about Preston's smirk. I thought about the snickering. I thought about 15 years of my life, erased in a 10-second soundbite. With a final, decisive click, I selected separated. I entered the date and time. I hit submit. A small green box popped up. Your status has been updated. And that was it. I had done my duty. I closed the laptop. What I did wasn't malicious. It was just the truth. I was no longer the responsible officer for Sterling Corporation. The consequences of that truth? They were entirely of their own making. That one click was the quiet start of a countdown on a time bomb I had built and they had armed. The Aegis system, my beautiful, brutal creation, was designed to constantly check those federal portals for my status. It didn't wait for a human to tell it something was wrong. When it saw the company's only responsible officer was separated, with no successor named, it would execute the dead man's switch protocol, the very one Preston had demanded. I went to bed early and slept like a rock, free from the weight of managing a multi-million-dollar compliance matrix for the first time in years. The next morning, I was making pancakes when my phone buzzed around 9:15 a.m. It was a text from Sarah, a junior analyst in finance I'd mentored. Asterisk Sarah. Weird question. Are the federal billing systems down? All our invoices to the DOE are getting rejected. Asterisk. I smiled a little. Asterisk me. Not sure, Sarah. I was let go yesterday. Hope you all figured out. Asterisk. I put my phone on silent and went out to my garden. Meanwhile, at Sterling Corp, the first wave of chaos was washing ashore. It started in finance with the rejected invoices. Then it hit the project managers, who found themselves locked out of the portals where they filed their mandatory daily reports. Access denied. Red flags were popping up everywhere. By 10:30 a.m., it was obvious this wasn't a simple IT glitch. The Aegis system had worked flawlessly. It saw my departure as a security crisis and locked down everything. Every single dollar of Sterling Corp's $14 million in federal contracts was frozen solid. All work stopped. All billing was suspended. According to the automated notice Aegis sent the agencies, Sterling Corp was in critical compliance failure. The financial bleeding was immediate. We're not just talking long-term projects. Much of it was hourly support. Every hour of downtime was an hour they couldn't work and couldn't bill. I later heard the initial estimates were around $100,000 per hour in lost revenue and penalties. Panic set in. The IT department was in a complete meltdown. They could see the system logs, but they couldn't make sense of them. Aegis was a black box to them. I built it, I maintained it, and I was the only one who understood its architecture. They could see the lockdown was automated, but they had no idea what triggered it, and they definitely couldn't override it. Tampering would trigger a secondary protocol, complete data erasure. Another one of Preston's brilliant ideas. By noon, the emergency meeting started. I could just picture Preston storming around, his face red, blaming IT, blaming finance, blaming everyone but himself. People like him never do. Their ego is a fortress against self-awareness. My phone started buzzing off the hook. I ignored it. I saw missed calls from the head of IT, the CFO, and even that frantic HR girl. I let them all go to voicemail. I was busy weeding my petunias. By 3 p.m., the federal agencies were calling Sterling Corp, asking why they had self-reported a massive compliance failure and voluntarily suspended all their own contracts. The reputational damage was spreading even faster than the financial losses. The first text from Preston hit my phone at 3:17 p.m. Asterisk Preston, we have a critical IT issue. Need your input immediately. Asterisk. The arrogance was stunning. Not, I screwed up. Not, can you please help us? Just a command, as if I still worked for him. I didn't reply. 10 minutes later, another one came through, more frantic. Asterisk Preston, this is not a request. Our federal systems are down. This is your area. Call me now. Asterisk. I'd blocked his number. The voicemails became a symphony of corporate desperation. Hey, it's Mark from IT. Listen, we're in deep. The Aegis system is completely locked. It's a credential flag. Please call me back. We'll make it worth your while. It's the CFO. The losses are significant. We're hemorrhaging money. Whatever they're paying you for severance, we'll double it. Just tell us how to turn this off. I listened to them, not with glee, but with a deep sense of vindication. It was like watching a law of physics play out. They treated me like I was disposable, and now they were finding out I was the main artery. As the sun set, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I had a feeling this was the one. I answered. Hello. The voice on the other end was calm and serious, with an authority Preston could only dream of. Am I speaking with the former director of compliance? You are. This is Arthur Vance, he said. I'm the chairman of the board at Sterling Corporation. He paused. I believe my CEO has made a grave miscalculation. The time bomb had finally reached someone who could actually defuse it, and I was the only one with the code. A grave miscalculation. That was the understatement of the year. On the phone, Arthur Vance didn't demand or threaten. He asked if I'd be willing to meet with him and the board to clarify the situation, his voice tight with a desperation he was barely hiding. I held all the cards, and we both knew it. "I'm willing to talk, Arthur," I said, my voice perfectly steady, "but it will be on my terms." My terms were simple. The meeting would be in the main boardroom at Sterling Tower the next morning. The entire board had to be there in person or on video. And most importantly, Preston Holloway had to be in the room. I wanted to see his face. The next morning, I walked back into Sterling Corp headquarters. The place felt like a funeral home. The lobby was dead silent. The security guard, who'd avoided my gaze just days before, now looked at me with something like awe and buzzed me right through. Up on the executive floor, I walked down the hall and pushed open the heavy boardroom doors. It was just as I'd pictured. Grim-faced board members on video screens. Arthur Vance, a man in his late 60s with tired eyes, sat at the head of the table. And there, to his right, was Preston. He looked awful. His suit was rumpled, his perfect hair was a mess, and his trademark smirk was gone, replaced by a pale, tight-lipped scowl. He refused to look at me. I took the empty seat directly across from him. The silence was deafening. Arthur finally broke it. "Thank you for coming," he said. "As you know, we are facing an unprecedented crisis. Our federal portfolio is frozen. We're losing over $100,000 an hour. We believe you have some insight." I let that hang in the air. "Insight? Arthur, I'm not the insight. My termination is the cause." Then I calmly laid it all out. I explained the Aegis system, the dead man's switch protocol, and how Preston himself had championed it for its brutal efficiency. "The system is designed to lock down if the responsible officer vacates the role without a certified successor," I explained. "As of 4 p.m. 2 days ago, Sterling Corp no longer has one. So, Aegis did exactly what it was built to do. It protected the company by shutting everything down." I looked right at Preston. I even had the memo from last November where I warned against this exact single point of failure. "You called it hand-wringing, Preston. Remember?" A muscle jumped in his jaw. He just stared at the table. Arthur Vance leaned forward. "So how do we fix it?" "It's not a switch you can just flip," I said. A certified responsible officer has to log in with a hardware key and designate a successor. The process is designed to take several hours to make sure it's not being done under duress. "And you have this key?" Arthur asked. I reached into my bag, pulled out a small USB stick, and placed it on the table. "This is the hardware key. It's one of a kind." The board stared at that little piece of plastic like it was the Holy Grail. Preston finally cracked. "This is extortion," he spat. "She's holding the company hostage. She planned this." I didn't even flinch. I just looked at him with pity. "I did nothing of the sort, Preston. I followed procedure, the same procedure you ignored. I updated my employment status, as required by law. Did you have a successor ready? Did you do any paperwork? Did you even understand the system you were so proud of? No. You wanted to humiliate me. Your ego wrote a check that this company can no longer cash." The room was dead quiet. Preston deflated in his chair, the fight completely gone. He knew I was right. They all did. Arthur cleared his throat. "What do you want?" This was it. "My demands aren't complicated," I said, my voice cold as ice. "First, my severance. You'll pay me for 15 years of service, a full year's salary for each year I worked here, plus a consulting fee for fixing this mess. Let's call it 10 times what the company has lost so far. Your CFO can do the math, but it's going to have at least 7 zeros. That gets wired before I touch anything." The CFO's eyes went wide, but Arthur held up a hand to silence him. "Second," I continued, Preston Holloway will resign, effective immediately. He will send a company-wide apology, admitting his grave miscalculation and taking full responsibility. No golden parachute. His exit will be just as public and humiliating as he tried to make mine. Preston shot up. You can't be serious. Arthur's voice was like stone. Sit down, Preston. He looked back at me. And third, I said, is a formality. You will give me a public letter of commendation for my 15 years of flawless service. And my new consulting firm will be retained permanently to oversee Sterling Corp's federal compliance. My rates are non-negotiable. The board just stared. It was audacious. It was ruthless. And they had no other choice. The number I'd named, as huge as it was a fraction of what they'd lose if their federal contracts were canceled for good. After a short, muted discussion, Arthur turned back to me, his face grim. We agree to all your terms. While the lawyers scrambled and the CFO arranged the transfer, Preston sat alone, staring into space. An hour later, my bank confirmed a staggering sum had been deposited. Then I got to work. As the board watched, I began the meticulous process of unlocking the Aegis system. As I was working, Preston was escorted from the room. He didn't look back. By late afternoon, the system was back online. The red flags turned green. The bleeding had stopped. I didn't stay to watch the aftermath. I shook Arthur Vance's hand and walked out of that building for the last time. I didn't feel triumphant, not in a fist-pumping way. I just felt a quiet, profound sense of justice, like the world had been knocked off its axis and was finally set right again. The next day, a company-wide email announced Preston's resignation, alongside a glowing commendation for my years of service. The story of the glitch that almost sank the company spread like wildfire, and with it the legend of the quiet compliance officer who held all the keys. Now, I know what you might be thinking. A single switch that could crater an entire company? It sounds like something from a movie. And in many ways, this story is a dramatization. The real world of federal contracting has more checks and balances to prevent a crisis from spiraling this fast. But the core lesson here is not fiction. It's a vital truth. Arrogant leaders who see people as disposable parts on a spreadsheet will always, eventually make a fatal mistake. They forget that companies aren't machines, they're ecosystems. And sometimes the quietest, most overlooked person is the one holding it all together. They thought they were trimming the fat, but it turned out to be the heart of the whole operation. Thank you for listening. If this story resonated with you, hit the like button and subscribe for more stories of workplace justice. Let me know in the comments. Have you ever had a boss who had no clue what you actually did? I'd love to hear your story. Until next time, remember your worth.